Hello, this is Mark from My Keys to Music. Thanks for joining me on this video. This song was written by Tommy Shaw of Styx, and Tommy not only is a great songwriter, but he plays fantastic guitar, great singer, and he writes songs for a lot of groups, not just Styx. If you haven't already checked out his video on YouTube where he is in collaboration with a student orchestra, you ought to check that out. It's a really good performance. It fires on all cylinders, and it's just a good thing to watch, and the whole spirit of it is positive. So definitely check that out. I'll put a link in the description below. Now for this, we are using a Nord Stage 3, which happens to be a pretty good keyboard at imitating sounds of the past, and even modern day sounds. And the sound is pretty interesting because it's two layers. We have a synth layer happening with another layer, which you don't necessarily hear when you first listen to it. So definitely check out my tutorial on that. And if you own a Nord Stage 3 already and you just are like this sound and you want to download it directly, you can certainly do that. If you're already a student of Master the Nord Stage 3, a course I make available online at My Keys to Music, then you already have access to this sound for immediate download. And you can also get it if you don't necessarily want to become a student, but you just want the sound. You can check out my Patreon page. And for a pretty low cost membership, you can jump in and get all the videos and the sounds that I use for all those videos on Patreon. Okay, let's go on the Nord Stage 3 and I'll give you a little breakdown of this sound. So here we have the Nord Stage 3, and on the intro sound, we have a few things happening. When I first tried to program this sound, I started with what I heard, and I heard a sawtooth with some glide. So it was something like this. And to the casual listener and to your first hear of that, it might be perfectly fine. You can kind of hear, oh yeah, that sounds kind of like it. But then I quickly realized that it's actually got a second oscillator happening in unison with that, but 2 octaves apart. And that sounds like this. Do you hear the 2 oscillators there? Let me adjust this so that we're mixing a sawtooth. In fact, I want to keep this as the new version of this. There we go. Instead of detuning it, I just want to do a regular mix of 2 sawtooths, 2 octaves apart. And here's the mix on that. That would be just the high one happening with this one, and then mixed together. Now we've got a sound that sounds a little bit closer to the original. But then the secret behind this, and you'll see this documented in the sheet music, it's layered with an organ. I'm using the B3 setting here on the Nord Stage 3. By itself, it sounds like this. And together, no, that's not together. Together. And you can hear both of those things. So it's really kind of 3 elements, 2 oscillators and an organ part. And in my opinion, they played this separately on the recording because this was in the days before MIDI. This song came out in 1977. That was before MIDI was really invented. So I don't think they had the ability to mix an organ-type keyboard with a synth-type keyboard in those days, unless the synth itself was able to imitate organ and have the 2 layered. And I didn't look up to see how this sound was created from, the studio notes or anything like that. So I apologize for that. I'm just kind of using my ears and saying, okay, I hear an organ, I hear the synth part. So that's what the intro sounds like. And then as part of that intro, there's a part B to it, which is this kind of this chord progression down. And although I'm not completely satisfied with the synth sound, I am including the organ with it. And here's what the organ sounds like just by itself. And you'll hear that it's really in the stratosphere from a octave standpoint. Instead of down here or down there, I keep it up here. And that seems to mix well with the synth part that sounds by itself like this. Now there's a little bit of raspiness to this sound that I'm not exactly pleased with. You're getting that raspiness from the drive 1 setting that I have, but I needed that to kind of dirty it up a little bit. There's a lot happening with this, and it was hard for me to duplicate exactly, so this is sort of an approximation of that sound. I also had to compromise between what I hear in the part coming down versus that big hold, which is sort of a gurgle. And so with the organ and the synth on that part B, hopefully that's not distorting in the speakers or in your ears at this point. This sound has a natural distortion to it again because of that drive 1. So that's part B, and then the quick switch that happens when you play that. And then on the beat, I push panel A and the F sharp at the same time to bring in that strolling part. So that's that. So that all of that sound takes care of the first part of the song. Then it's solo organ at that point, where they come in with the verses. And that is, it does have the Leslie, it's on slow. What I'd rather hear here is a lot more chorus happening. And maybe I could add some chorus to this. I didn't even think about that, really. I could. Let's just see if the organ wants to have any chorus. Ooh, that does sound better. Versus this. It feels a lot more, yeah. Now I wonder if that mixes well now with the beginning. It'll be fine. Okay, so you've just witnessed a live change here. I normally don't do that. Normally I get all the sounds figured out and then I do the recording of this video, but you're catching me here being myself. So that's kind of cool. Now that we've got this brand new sound. So after that whole intro happens, just turn off the synth and you'll be playing the... And then the little synth part that weaves in and out. You can just turn on the synth, turn off the organ. Now, as you get into this song, you'll quickly realize that it actually needs 2 keyboard players to pull it off. Because as this, winding back for a second on the intro, when you play this part, there's actually chords happening. Goo, 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 goo. Along with that, kind of like padded chords in time in that same rhythm, other than this solo note. So both of those are happening at the same time. I didn't take the time to figure out, okay, how are we going to do that, or figure out the left hand. That would be, there's a lot going on there. I'm sure it was played separately on the recording. I assume it is. Okay, so now you get past the first verse, and eventually you get in there, and it's time now for the solo part, and I've got a dedicated sound for that. And the solo is neat because if you pay attention how we did this lead part for the intro, we separated it by 24 semitones. But on the solo part, which is the next sound up, Styx Fooling Solo, it still has 2 saws combined, but this time, instead of 24 semitones separated, it's just 12 semitones or 1 octave with a mix that emphasizes the main oscillator. And I've added some EQ, some chorus, and it's pretty powerful. And I think that'll do fine for the solo and the whole solo on the outro. But I was going to originally do this video and use the same sound at the beginning for the solo part, just minus the organ, you know. but it's not as separated. In fact, what did I do here? I did something wrong. There's a mix missing. Yeah, I messed this up right in front of you. Okay, so let's fix this now. We need to mix this. I could go 50-50 on that. I'm happy with that. Maybe not so much 50-50. I'm going to lean a little towards... because you'll have the organ too to help with that. All right, so now let me save that again in real time, live. Okay, so back to what I was saying. The solo part has a 12 semitone oscillator mixed in with the main oscillator, and that's what it sounds like. Here's what it would be with just a single oscillator. I mean, acceptable, but listen to when you bring this in. If I bring it in too much, obviously it's too much. So if you are looking to do lead sounds on your synth and you do have the 2 oscillator option, you'll find that if you just grab another oscillator and put it up 12 semitones but mix it lower so that it's not necessarily 50-50, because 50-50 does change the personality of the sound. You can clearly hear that's a wide... But if you want it to be just a thicker main oscillator, you can sort of spoof that by adding the 12 semitone oscillator higher, but not mixed in full. Now it sounds like a pretty thick main oscillator. Of course, the Nord Stage 3 gives us the option to do unison as well. Without that, we'd be pretty thin. See, that's a very thin, and that'll work for some sounds and some songs. That's what you want, a thin sound, but in this one you want definitely something thicker. Now one might say, well, why don't you use the super saw and try that? It's just too much. That's more that Van Halen type jump sound that you don't want for this song. You just want the regular, let me go back here, just the regular, simple, classic sawtooth, but with a little mix in with the 12 semitone there. Now we do have glide happening. We have a little bit more glide for the solo part, a 0.4 glide instead of the beginning part, which has a 0.2 glide, if I'm not mistaken. It does, 0.2. And because it's happening so fast at the intro, you don't want to have too much glide because then it slows it down. It kind of gets too thick, and you're not hearing the next notes when they need to happen. All right, so those are the 2 sounds. Just a quick recap. We have the intro sound. And we've got the synth mixed with a B3 organ. Then we have the B part of that intro. And then we have the solo parts on on a whole nother program. And then there's that great lead-up part. And whenever you make a sound for a solo, you kind of have to listen to the beginning of the solo, the middle of the solo, and the end to make sure the sound works on all of it. And this particular solo here in the middle has this great run-up. So I think it works pretty well for that. Is it exact? No, but we're doing the best we can here on the Nord Stage 3 and with my own skills as they are today. In any case, this is available for download at my Patreon site. You'd have to be a member to get in, and you'd take a look at this video. It would link directly to this YouTube video, but below that video, you'd see these 2 sounds, these 2 programs ready to go, ready to be loaded on your Nord Stage 3. If you are already a student, an active student at My Keys to Music with the course Master the Nord Stage 3, then you also have a link to this video with the sounds below. As always, thanks for joining me. These songs from the 80s are always a lot of fun. Or 80s, these are actually the 70s at this point, late 70s. But Styx is near and dear to my heart. It's what inspired me to start and learn the synthesizer, to really get involved with keyboards and joining a rock band, and it was a progressive rock band. And really, Styx is one of the main groups that inspired that whole journey. So, and this song in particular was the first thing I heard on a Korg Poly 6 Korg synthesizer back in the 6th grade. They were doing a demonstration in class, and there it was, the Poly 6 in its full glory, and the music teacher had fired up a sound, and I'm almost positive it was this first that he played, and it's like, oh my gosh, that is so incredible. That sounds just like the real thing. And something snapped in me from that point forward. I was hooked. I knew I was going to be dealing with synthesizers for the rest of my life. So here we are. Thanks again for watching. Don't forget to subscribe and like and share and all that good stuff. We appreciate you, and keep your eye on more content coming out. We've got a lot of techie stuff coming, a lot of MIDI planned. So I'm sure it's going to be a wild adventure of experimentation, which is my middle name. Talk to you later, guys. Thanks.